let's finish up the most dangerous game. We're going to go from page 19 all the way through the end of 21. So I have my text open to the top of page 19. I also have my annotation bookmark open. I've been reading along with the text using this audio from YouTube, and that's your choice. Just an option there to remind you about. So at the top of page 19, this is where we left off, that Rainsford had found this quicksand pit, and he got trapped in it, but realized what he could do with it was actually use it. So he sharpened some sticks, and he laid those sticks strategically kind of in this trap in this sand with some brush over it to trap Zaroff, who was chasing after him to kill him in the most dangerous game. So I'm going to start right here in this first paragraph and continue on with my first read. I'm going to pause at the end and write one annotation as an example. You're going to follow up with a second read and continue with your annotations in the same way that I write mine. So, he knew his pursuer, who was Zaroff, was coming. He heard the padding sound of feet on the soft earth, and the night breeze brought him to the perfume of the general's cigarette. It seemed to Rainsford that the general was coming with unusual swiftness. He was not feeling his way along foot by foot. Rainsford, crouching there, could not see the general, nor could he see the pit. He lived a year in a minute. Then he felt an impulse to cry aloud with joy, for he heard the sharp crackle of the breaking branches as the cover of the pit gave way. So he knew that Zaroff was around that trap that he had made. He heard the sharp scream of pain as the pointed stakes found their mark. He leaped up from his place of concealment. Then he cowered back. 3 feet from the pit, a man was standing with an electric torch in his hand, which is a flashlight. "You've done well, Rainsford," the voice of the general called. "Your Burmese tiger pit has claimed one of my best dogs. Again, you score. I think, Mr. Rainsford, I'll see what you can do against my whole pack. I'm going home for a rest now. Thank you for the most amusing evening." So again, Zaroff has another upper hand, and this isn't really a fair fight still. So Rainsford has a knife and basically his knowledge, and Zaroff has now a whole pack of hunting dogs, a gun, rest, food. He has all sorts of tools, and so this isn't really a fair fight, right? So we have to keep thinking about that. At daybreak, Rainsford, laying near the swamp, was awakened by a sound that made him know that he had new things to learn about fear. It was a distant sound, faint and wavering, but he knew it. It was the baying of a pack of hounds. So, like, hunting dogs are after him now, not just Zaroff. Rainsford knew he could do one of two things. He could stay where he was and wait. That was suicide. He could flee. That was postponing the inevitable, or what was bound to happen. For a moment, he stood there thinking. An idea that held a wild chance came to him, and, tightening his belt, he headed away from the swamp. The baying of the hounds drew nearer, then still nearer, ever nearer. On a ridge, Rainsford climbed a tree. Down a watercourse, not a quarter of a mile away, he could see the bush moving. Straining his eyes, he saw the lean figure of General Zaroff. Just ahead of him, Rainsford made out another figure, Ivan, whose wide shoulders surged through the tall jungle weeds. It was the giant Ivan, and he seemed pulled forward by some unseen force. Rainsford knew that Ivan must be holding the pack in leash. They would be on him any minute now. His mind worked frantically. He thought of a native trick he learned in Uganda. He slid down the tree. He caught hold of a springy young sapling, and to it he fastened his hunting knife. With the blade pointing down the trail, with a bit of wild grapevine, he tied back the sapling. Then he ran for his life. The hounds raised their voices as they hit the fresh scent. Rainsford knew now how an animal at bay feels. He had to stop to get his breath. The baying of the hounds stopped abruptly, and Rainsford's heart stopped too. They must have reached the knife. He shinnied excitedly up a tree and looked back. His pursuers had stopped, but the hope that was in Rainsford's brain when he climbed died, for he saw in the shallow valley that General Zaroff was still on his feet. But Ivan was not. The knife, driven by the recoil of the sapling tree, had not wholly failed. Rainsford had hardly tumbled to the ground when the pack took up the cry again. Nerve, nerve, nerd, nerve, which means like darn it, he panted as he dashed along. A blue gap showed between the trees dead ahead. Ever nearer drew the hounds. Rainsford forced himself toward that gap. He reached it. It was the shore of the sea. Across the cove he could see the gloomy gray stone of the chateau. 20 feet below him the sun rumbled and hissed. Rainsford hesitated. He heard the hounds. Then he leaped far out into the sea. When the general and his pack reached the place by the sea, the Cossack stopped. For some minutes he stood regarding the blue-green expanse of water. He shrugged his shoulders. Then he sat down, took a drink of brandy from a silver flask, lit a cigarette, and hummed a bit from Madame Butterfly. General Zaroff had an exceedingly good dinner in his great paneled dining hall that evening. So General Zaroff is knowing that Rainsford jumped off the cliff, and he's sort of celebrating now Rainsford's suicide, assumed suicide here. With it, he had a bottle of Pol Roger and half a bottle of Chambertin. 2 slight annoyances kept him from perfect enjoyment. One was the thought that it would be difficult to replace Ivan. So he's kind of expendable to him. He's like, darn, now I have this job of replacing Ivan. Not, oh, how sad he's dead. The other was that the quarry had escaped him. Of course, the American hadn't played the game because he thinks jumping off the cliff was cheating. So thought the general as he tasted his after-dinner liqueur. In his library he read to soothe himself from the works of Marcus Aurelius. At 10 he went up to his bedroom. He was deliciously tired, he said to himself as he locked himself in. There was a little moonlight. So before turning on his light, he went to the window and looked down at the courtyard. He could see the great towns, and he called, "Better luck next time," to them. Then he switched on the light. A man who had been hiding in the curtains of the bed was standing there. "Rainsford!" screamed the general. "How in God's name did you get here?" "Swam," said Rainsford. "I found it quicker than walking through the jungle." The general sucked in his breath and smiled. "I congratulate you," he said. "You have won the game." Rainsford did not smile. "I am still a beast at bay," he said in a low, hoarse voice. "Get ready, General Zaroff." The general made one of his deepest bows. "I see," he said. "Splendid. One of us is to furnish a repast for the hounds. The other will sleep in this very excellent bed. On guard, Rainsford." He had never slept in a better bed, Rainsford decided. So Rainsford was hiding. He got to the chateau. He was hiding in the bedroom. He was waiting for Zaroff, and Zaroff says, "Oh my gosh, good for you. It's the 3rd day, and I haven't killed you, so you win. You get to go home." And Rainsford's whole mind has changed, and he's like, "Oh no, this isn't over until the hunter has been killed," right? So his whole mindset of like what is hunting kind of has switched to like, I'm okay murdering because I've been hunted. I know how it feels to be changed sort of mentally, emotionally. And so he doesn't just let Zaroff let him leave. They have sort of a sword fight, and then the winner of the sword fight would be fed to the dog. I'm sorry, the loser of the sword fight would be fed to the dogs. The winner gets to rest, right? And so Rainsford gets to rest, and therefore we decide Rainsford has become a murderer, right? And you have to decide, is that okay? Was it okay for him to murder Zaroff because he was hunting him? Is it never okay to murder? Is there somewhere in the middle? How has Rainsford changed? So that's the end of our short story. I hope you found it interesting, and we'll keep talking about it. Thanks. Oops, never mind. Let's do an annotation. So I want to do a note. I'm going to use this markup feature on the left side of the Kami tools, and I'm going to say, The text that says, "I am still a beast at bay," he said in a low, hoarse voice. That really stood out to me while we were reading. I'm going to use this comment feature now. I'm going to choose pink and choose over here. So that really stood out to me. I highlighted it because our topic that we're studying with our annotations is the effects of hunting, how hunting changes you or what it does to a person or to an animal. And so I think this was really interesting because in this text, "I am still a beast at bay," Rainsford is describing himself as a beast. It's almost like he doesn't even see himself as human. After having gone through that whole hunting experience, being an animal himself, he's like, "I'm an animal now. This is what I become. Like, I'm vicious. I am unstoppable. I don't have morals anymore," right? Morals are like knowing what's right and wrong and having rules for how you treat people. And so that's gone now. He's an animal. He doesn't think murder is bad necessarily, right? Because morality would say don't murder another person. So I'm going to take this annotation. I'm going to write a note about it. So I go to my bookmark that I have open. I'm going to use analyzing the author's craft. So I go back. First, I write my skill, analyzing the author's craft. And then the topic we're studying is the effects of hunting. I'm going to go back to my bookmark, find my sentence starter, and I'm going to write the phrase. This phrase stands out for me because, so finish this up, this phrase stands out to me because it shows that Rainsford has transformed over time and become like an animal or beast. He has lost his morality, which is like codes of morals, what is right and wrong, and now believes murder is okay. I guess I'll say that. So that's my example annotation for pages 19 through 21. And you are free to use that annotation as well in your text. You're going to write over these last pages. So throughout 19 through 21, you're going to write 2 more. So you'll have a total of 3 annotations using your bookmark, the topic, the effects of hunting, use a sentence starter, and complete that sentence. So that when you go to write, you'll have text that has an explanation, and you can put those right into body paragraphs. The more work you do while you're writing, the better, reading, the better your writing will be. All right, thanks guys. See you later.